Welcome to the latest edition of Trusty's Vintage Deep Dive. Tonight we've got as my special guest Cyndi from Mimi's Treasure Cottage, and we are going to be talking about Longaberger baskets. So Cyndi's got a tall order ahead of her for this evening because definitely is something she knows knows a lot about. She knows the collectability, she knows the history of them, and I really couldn't care less. So I did a little bit of digging and was actually pleasantly surprised on how collectible they still were. I kind of thought that was one of those, like, we're done collecting Norman Rockwell figurines and precious moments. Let's go collect Longaberger baskets. And I was quite surprised to see that there definitely is still some collectability. They're regularly popping up on eBay, and some of them selling for very good dollar amounts. And so what I discovered, that's exactly what deep dives are for, is let's figure out, what's the true story, what makes them something more valuable, what makes something more interesting or still collectible. And as we're out and about, how will we know first, how will we know a Longaberger basket from, a Hobby Lobby basket? And what are the ones to be on the lookout if we are reselling? So thank you for Cyndi first for joining me this evening. Got some people in the chat, and encourage all of the Huckster Hecklers. This is a live interview, so if you've got questions, make sure you drop them into the chat. So we got Vinny coming in, one of my previous deep dive guests, talking about his Coca-Cola trays. And we've got Annette Fain coming back in. Chad's coming in from Maryland. Thanks for joining us. Carrie coming in from Texas. Got Helen Casey in the house. We've got Katie, who was also, she's been a multiple deep dive guest. She did my very, very first deep dive. She did typewriter ribbon tins. So that is in the history, the archives of my YouTube channel. And she did one on vintage LPs. And we are in the process of booking a third one, which I'm going to have to desperately try and find something for my collection in order for me to do it. So let's see. We got Vintage Cat and Paws. Thanks so much for joining in. And Misty Mountain Vintage Hunter. Thanks so much for joining. Debbie coming in from Chicago. Cheryl Ross. Thanks so much. Susan White is coming back in from Mississippi. And let's see, I think it says Cheryl Ross. Roxana Sellers is coming in. Thanks so much. Linda's back. Hey, Linda. Let's see. Rebecca Higgins representing the great state of Maine also. So we got some East Coast. We've got Lena coming in. Thanks for joining. So hopefully, if you're new to my channel or new to deep dives, they all kind of take the same format. I am trying to, hey, Joanne, I am trying to learn a little bit more information about a very specific topic. And hopefully as people are watching this, I hope these videos will become a little bit of an archive that you can then go back to them and say, okay, what were we talking about? What were the things to look out for? What were the things to avoid? And so, definitely Cyndi's going to be sharing all the information she's got, but a lot of the names that I'm seeing are, either resellers or collectors, shoppers from the live sales. Most of us probably come across Longaberger. So if you've got questions or things that you've seen, definitely throw those comments into the chat, and I'll try to make sure that we go and include those. But why don't we kick things off with Cyndi? Why don't you just tell us a little bit, like, why Longaberger? Why was that the topic you wanted to do a deep dive on?
Well, to be honest with you, I wanted to come on the show. I was trying to think of something that I knew something about, because I typically have a very broad knowledge of a lot of stuff and a very shallow of a lot of different things. And I had originally thought about doing ball canning jars, and then I realized after it took some time to get through our scheduling and everything that it didn't hold any interest for me anymore. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, it's staring me right in the face, almost literally. I have Longaberger everywhere in my house, and it comes up often in through my videos and other people's chats and other people's videos and things, that people don't really seem to know a whole lot about them. They don't know really what the values are, what the values were, whether or not they can make any money on them, what to look for, all that sort of stuff. And I thought, what, that would be a really good topic, I think. So that's kind of where I came from with that, was to approach it that way, because I see it all the time. And I do see them out a lot, and it's really interesting to see. We find a lot of times people have a tendency to live in the past with when the values were really wonderful. And the values on Longaberger, I won't kid anybody, have come way down. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to give some history. I'm going to give you some history of the Longaberger Company, um, uh, tell you about the baskets, about their lines and all that kind of stuff before I really jump into the whole reselling and values and all that kind of stuff. Because as with anything that's collectible that you guys see out in the wild and whatever, you can make money on Longaberger baskets. I can make money on Longaberger baskets, but you have to know what you're looking for and you have to know how much to pay. So that's kind of all, that kind of goes with everything, and that's important.
And I think that's really valid too, because before we went live, Cyndi and I were talking a little bit, prepping for this video or for this chat, and I admitted that the Longaberger was not something I knew anything about. That's the whole reason I agreed to do deep dives, because I definitely want to learn. But I always want to have something in my collection when I do the deep dive, just so I have something tangible, something I can show. And what I was surprised is I really kind of waited to the last minute, just being me, and I did find them. So I went to the local Goodwill, and they had two on the shelves. They had them kind of in their little higher end collecting area. And the price points on those were super, super high. That then when I tried to cross-reference them on eBay, it did not match. Like what they were asking was even higher than what they were selling for on eBay. And then I went to garage sale. The town next to me had their local garage sale. And I found multiple homes that had Longaberger baskets in their sale. So it's they definitely are out there, and it's just something that I never even bothered to pay attention to, because I didn't think at this point a Longaberger basket was any more valuable than a Hobby Lobby made in China basket. So it's definitely looking forward to doing this and learning a little bit more about what makes the Longaberger.
Let me go ahead and get a little bit into the history of Longaberger baskets and how they started. So basically, Longaberger Company was started by a gentleman named Dave Longaberger, and he was the son, actually the grandson of a gentleman who moved to Dresden, Ohio in 1896, and that man's name was John. He began working at the local basket factory there in Dresden, Ohio. His son, which would be Dave's father, John Wendell, or they called him J.W. Longaberger, followed in his dad's footsteps, and then also went to work for this local basket company. And he really enjoyed it, and he actually became quite good at making baskets. Later on, he wound up making baskets in his spare time. He worked for the where did he work at? Oh, I don't have that written down, but he actually started working in his spare time in the back of his home, and he sold them to the local people there. The basket company that he worked for, that he did in his own home. This is Dave Longaberger's father. He called it the Ohio Ware Basket Company, and he made baskets for the local potteries and different things like that were in Roseville and Zanesville, which many of us, probably from reselling, are aware of. And then JW created baskets from 1930 to the 1970s. Well, his son, his son, Dave, he wound up becoming very interested in this, and he also made baskets with his father as well. And Dave, interesting story about Dave. I just started reading again. I read this once a long time ago. This is a book about Dave Longaberger, and for any entrepreneur out there, which many of us that are resellers, that's what we are entrepreneurs. This book is an amazing book, full of insight and inspiration just into the entrepreneurial spirit. I would say anybody who's ever interested in starting their own business should read this book. It's a very, very good book. It's an easy read too. That's where a lot of this information comes from that I'm talking about. But Dave Longaberger got a job as a small child at a grocery store, and he wound up owning his own grocery stores before he started making, well, he didn't start making, he started selling his dad's baskets in his grocery stores. And
what year are we in for this?
Oh, so we're up into the 70s.
70s, okay.
Yeah. 1973 is when Dave Longaberger started selling the baskets and actually having them made. I don't think at that time he was making them, but he started selling them in his grocery store in 1973. he owned 3 different businesses, and he was very busy at that time doing all of that. So he didn't put a whole lot of energy into the basket company until 1978. But they do claim 1973 as the official start of the Longaberger Company. But it was in 1978 when he decided that he was going to do the direct marketing, direct selling model. And so that's where all the consultants come in. So pretty much the entire time that the Longaberger Company existed, the only way to buy the basket was through a consultant. So you had to either do a home party or do, a book party or something in order to buy the baskets. So
when did consultants come into the picture?
That was about 1978, I think, is when he started.
Oh, late 70s still. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're still in the late 70s. Anyway, I got my notes all over the place. Oh, but another interesting thing about Dave Longaberger and why I showed that book initially, I think that's really important. Not important, but it's a great book for people that are entrepreneurs and getting started in business, is to learn how he thought, because he was really the force behind the Longaberger Company. And the Longaberger Company in 1973. And my notes say in 1973 they had 350 employees, but I don't think that's the case. I think when he started actually doing the home sales and started putting his effort into the business, that's when this probably is more accurate. But at that time, when they had 350 employees, they had $81 million in revenue. Or excuse me, not 81 million. I misread my handwriting. $8 million in revenue, 350 employees. By 2000, which was their peak, they had 8,000 employees and $1 billion with a B in revenue. So they went all the way up there and just, had a wonderful run of it. In 2012, however, the revenue was down to 100 million and they were taken over by another company. So, that's kind of the rise and the fall of Longaberger. But anyways, back to Dave Longaberger. I keep wanting to go back to this because it's such a cool thing. So Dave Longaberger, when he was a child, he stuttered. He stuttered, I guess, severely. And he was always working to overcome that, disadvantage. And so he actually, he did a number of different things. He sold Fuller brushes. He did magazine sales for his school, all things that you wouldn't think that somebody with a stutter, or that kind, because it was profound, would be able to do. But he did it. And it took him 15 years to complete high school. He graduated at 21. But he was determined to graduate from high school, and he never went to college. Basically, that was it. He said that he had a sixth grade reading or writing ability. It must be reading, because that's what they usually did that. Hi, Sheila. I wasn't aware of that. I'm not sure. It probably was in the book, or maybe I knew it at one time, but it wouldn't be surprising to me at all. Oh, yeah, no, I did know that. Yes, I did know that, because in this book they talked about that he didn't know from time to time if he was going to have a seizure. I remember it now. And the kids were, kids are kids, and they were always, watching, hey, can you have a seizure now or whatever? Yeah, kind of bizarre. But very, very interesting. If you guys are interested in that book, I would definitely take a look at that. So anyway, the Longaberger Company made a variety of different items. I'm going to show you some of these items. Everything from... I'll show you something from there. Hold on. From their standard line, this is a berry basket. This would have been from just their regular line. I believe it's a medium berry basket. This is from 1998. All Longaberger baskets do have the marking on the bottom, and they are signed and dated by the weaver that made them. They are made out of hardwood maple splints, and you will definitely notice the difference between a Longaberger basket and a standard, basket made out of reed. The quality is just so much better. They have the metal rivets in them if they have handles, all sorts of different things like that.
As we go into the designs of the baskets, Vintage and Vino had a comment so that in their collection, the oldest is 83. So you were mentioning that as early as 78, they were introducing consultants. So like, how did it progress? Because if they were selling them in the grocery stores, his individual grocery store until it became a thing, was it a big line that they started selling in 78? Like, what were the consultants selling in the beginning, and then how did that progress?
I think that's a really good question. One that unfortunately I'm afraid I don't totally know the answer to. I know that in the beginning they did have a limited line, and I don't have a sample of it here, but their very first basket, if I'm not mistaken, was the medium market basket. And that's what their company building was eventually modeled after. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So they had just a few staples, and they go back to the things that his dad was making routinely for the potteries. So they were all utilitarian baskets, things that people could use in the home, things that people could use in the markets. So they had those baskets. And then when he jumped into it, so that was 1973. When he jumped into it more in 1978, then I'm sure he increased the line, but I don't know how many or what he added to the line when he did the consultants. But
do because like you said, there's some traditional forms. Is there something that over the course of the time, maybe not all the way back in the 70s, but as it moved forward, were there designs that were only made for 1 year?
Absolutely.
Okay, but were there also lines that continued every year, and really the only way you would know the difference is the year it was signed?
Yeah.
Okay.
There were some that were like pretty much throughout the entire history of the company. The market basket is probably one of those. I'm not sure if they retired the berry basket at some point in time. They might have, but I'm sure that this was on the line for decades as well. This was a standard piece. But many of the pieces actually were special limited edition type things. So they had various different lines of baskets. For example, they had a Mother's Day line of baskets. So every year they would come out with a new Mother's Day basket. And I actually have the one that my husband and my daughter got me from the first year after my oldest daughter was born. And this, I believe, did I write it down? I did. The Timeless Memory. Yes, Timeless Memory 1997 basket. And this was a special fabric that they had for the basket. So that's something else I want to talk about as well. This one kind of shows all of that. So in addition to being able to find just your standard basic basket made out of the maple splints, okay, like this. One of the things that I think makes Longaberger special was that they had they had liners that would come with their basket, so you could get the fabric liners. They had these little basket tie-ons that you could get as well. Eventually, they introduced the woodcraft line, so they would have lids and inserts. I know Patrick has some inserts that he had picked up. And then they also had the plastic protectors for the baskets as well that you could get, which actually increased the utility of the basket because then you weren't worried about damaging the inside of your basket. So all of those things came into play. They also, so I showed you the baskets. They had the fabric liners, they had the protectors, the woodcraft lids, and they also had pottery. So they had a line of pottery that they introduced as well. And the pottery all is going to have this, what they call the woven L on the bottom. I don't know if I can get it. There we go. It's the woven L is on their pottery. And there were some reproductions of this. So this marking, which is very, denotes Longaberger, this symbol here, this, whatever that is, motif. And there were some reproductions, but you will know the official Longaberger stuff by this marking on the bottom.
One of the questions with the one that you showed, the mother's basket, whatever you called it, it had a lid to it. You're referring to that as, the wood products. Is there a way to know, were baskets designed to be with lids? Like if we find them in the wild without a lid, is there a way to know if a basket is missing its lid, or were the lids kind of interchangeable that you could just buy a lid for whatever basket you had?
No, not all not all baskets had lids. I'm not sure. I don't remember, to be quite honest with you, if these mainline ones did. they may have had lids at some point in time, and somebody in the comments may actually know. Because, like I said, I am not the be all and end all of Longaberger knowledge, even though I do have quite a bit of knowledge. But many of the special edition baskets did. So you could purchase the liner, the protector, the tie-on, the lid. Some of them even came with, and this was another line that they introduced at one point. Some of them even came with, or didn't come with, but you could purchase separately, wrought iron that would go with it. So this is my little sweetheart basket set. Right now I don't remember. Did I put it in here? I don't think so. I tried to get names and price comparisons for all of you guys, for all of these baskets for you guys, but I didn't get them on everything. But this was from the Sweetheart basket set, and these little baskets were actually designed in the shape of a heart, and they had the little wrought iron stand that went with them. So they were in, so now you see they were in pottery, they were in baskets, they were in fabric, they were in wrought iron, and they were in, I did say pottery. So they had their hands in an awful lot of things. Yeah.
So one of the comments that came in, again, from Vintage and Vino, is commenting that you could buy the lid, the liner, the skirt, etc. So that's actually something I hadn't realized. So some of the baskets, were all of the baskets sold just as a basket, and then you could add a liner, and then like were there multiple liners to choose from?
Some of the baskets had multiple liners, some of them did not. It depended. I think they diversified as they went along. But for instance, the things in the regular line had probably the most versatility as far as the things that you could purchase to go with them. So you could get a liner for this and quite a variety of different fabrics that went along with that. The Mother's Day basket that I showed you before, this was the signature Mother's Day fabric that they introduced, and is actually my favorite pattern that they had. But I'm not sure if you could get another fabric for that particular one. Maybe later ones you could. Some of the special edition baskets did have multiple fabric options. For example, this one is the 1998 Picture Perfect basket, and this has a chambray liner, a blue chambray liner. But this particular basket also came with 3 different colors of ticking fabric, like a red, a blue, and a green ticking as well. This was in their Sweetheart basket line. So when I went out to eBay to look at different things, I saw lots of them with the red ticking. Because it was a Sweetheart basket, I think most people chose to get the red ticking. So maybe if you found one of these with a different color liner, it might be a better option for you, since there were so many of the other ones.
Now, one of the things that you've shown in both of the baskets, that the liner actually draped over. So I don't know if that's what Jerry was talking about. I don't know what a skirt would be.
There are different liners. Like the one that you have is one that's raised. It comes up above. So that was one choice. And not all baskets had the option of having both liners. It depended on the design of the basket and what they thought was more conducive to it. So this basket that I showed you, the Mother's Day basket, it flipped over. This one, the little Sweetheart basket, that one went over. And pretty much most of the ones that I have here went over, probably because I didn't really care for the ones that stuck up.
Well, just from a functional standpoint, like the question about the lids, this one definitely, like you wouldn't be able to have a lid, because this
I mean, if it came with one, you could put a lid on there. I don't have any samples of that to show you, but and here's an example of what is this one? So this goes back to the earlier where I said I wasn't really sure about lids for all the baskets, but this one is one that was a fabric covered lid that was for the small fruit basket, which was in the regular line. So yeah, I guess they did have them for everything. So you could have probably gotten a lid for this berry basket as well. But if it had, I got hair there, sorry. If they had a lid that, or a liner that stuck up, one of those raised, and I can't remember, there was a name for it, the raised edge ones, the lid would sit down kind of inside the liner and kind of sit on top of the protector in the liner. So, I mean, there were some baskets that were like that. But
Now for value, I mean, obviously
Mhm.
the more pieces you're going to have, I'm assuming the more value you'll have, but is there going to be a value to, like, say, your Mother's Day basket? Is there a value to the Mother's Day basket if you don't have a liner, if you don't have the skirt, you don't have the lid, or is at some point it's considered incomplete?
They did sell the basket plain, and I did see a basket. Maybe this one in particular itself on eBay when I was looking up things, just the basket. Now, if you ask me, and this is my personal opinion, I would never buy one for me if it didn't come with everything. I did find a couple out at last summer. I was out at an antiques festival in Ohio, and I picked up a few Longaberger baskets out there that somebody was selling. And this is a little tree trimming basket. It's really cute, with the red and green upslints on it. It just has a protector with it. I would have much rather bought this if it had the liner to go with it too. And why is that? Because I may not have as very good luck finding a liner if I want one. Because most of the time they were sold with the basket. So if you didn't get it with the basket, you might not find it. Now, that said, as a consultant, we had the opportunity every year, and I believe it was in the summer, they had a big convention for the consultants called the Longaberger Basket Bee, and they were in Columbus, Ohio, a huge thing, at least when I went. As a matter of fact, I think we had entertainment. I think the entertainment was Aretha Franklin. So like it was a big deal. But they had a store there for the consultants where I believe you could purchase, not where I believe, I know you could, you purchase the liners and things like that, which is where I got this one that I showed you, this little lid, because I just picked up a whole bunch of stuff that they had extra there. And back then, so Longaberger is probably my very first stint into reselling, because I was buying up those old liners and protectors and lids and whatever that they were offering to consultants, and I was selling them on eBay. And that was when eBay was in its infancy. I made a lot of money selling baskets on eBay in the beginning. And then the market kind of got saturated and it wasn't as lucrative for me at that point. But yeah, lots and lots and lots of money to be had in the early days. Go ahead.
So one of the questions, I sheepishly showed my linerless basket that I just bought. But that's okay. I bought it specifically for the deep dive, and anyone who likes either of these baskets, they'll be in an upcoming live sale because I'm not keeping them. So I found that interesting though, because when I found this basket, I didn't think anything of it, that it didn't have a liner. So are you saying that even like a little shallow, wide top?
That one, in my estimate, now it would have come with a liner.
It would have come with a liner. Okay, I didn't realize that they all had liners.
Yeah, they all had liners available. It didn't mean that you had to purchase them with them. But usually, if you were going to have a liner, you had the basket.
Okay.
Right? But that particular one is really neat. I was telling Patrick before we started that was from my time frame when I was in Longaberger, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it. But I really liked the open weave bottom on that basket. So that might have been one that you wouldn't have put a liner in because you wanted to showcase that open weave. So maybe just a plastic protector in there, so when you look down, you could see the open weave on it. But yeah, each and every basket that they did have had the option of doing that. Now, I don't remember when they introduced that, because I don't believe that liners and protectors were from the very beginning. I think that somewhere along the line, those came into play as the company grew.
So both of the ones that I have are dated 2002.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things you had mentioned about the inserts, and Cyndi and I talked about this before we started. When I bought this basket, it was at a garage sale. It included this little insert as well as this insert, which is slightly smaller, and it included a little tie-on thing, little baskets. And the main reason I was buying it was for the brochure, because I figured I could learn something to keep up with Cyndi. So I got the little brochure. But Cyndi, what you were saying, so what were these inserts designed for? Like, it seems that I do not have the proper
Yeah, I don't think those inserts go with the basket that you have. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think they do. And as I was mentioning before, they stick up above the basket.
Right.
They are not divided so that you could make them crisscross to make sections in there. I don't think they go with your basket.
Was this something that was designed, like, was this something available for a lot of different size baskets?
That may have been designed for a specific basket.
But I mean, the concept of these little inserts, did they do this for all the baskets, or was it
not
just
all of them, but some of them? For example, there's the one basket, I don't even know if that's what they call it, but we used it as the spoon basket, may have been the name of it, but it had a wooden divider that would interlock that you could put down inside of it, so you could actually put your silverware and stuff in it for, if you were doing a picnic or something, you could serve things that way. Some of the, and I don't think I have any of the samples of that even handy. I'm looking around my house because I got baskets everywhere.
One thing I distracted you from when you first started showing it, if we can go a little bit in reverse, but this is the fun of the deep dive. We kind of like follow the rabbit holes and where we need to. You started showing like how, and Katie from Vintage and Vinyl had made a comment that her cousin sold them, and they're just really high quality. A lot of people are talking about the quality. Can you go back and show, whether it's that first basket or just any one of your baskets, the highlight of like how a Longaberger basket is made? Right. I don't really have, I didn't even think to grab like a crappy basket, but like what would be kind of like, if, I mean, from what you said, they're all signed. So that you said they're all signed though. So like off the bat.
They are all signed. So you're going to find the stamp here. And I think that this stamp it's possible that this stamp takes on a different look depending on the date of the basket as well, although I don't know what all those are. But it's going to say Longaberger with the stamp on it, and it's going to have the basket weaver's initials and the date on it.
Because what date was that one again?
This one is 1998, I believe, this basket.
Okay. Mine are from 2002, and they have the same stamp.
Yeah. So Longaberger baskets are handcrafted from hardwood maple splints. So that sets them apart in that regard as well. You can feel the splints. They're very high quality. They're thicker. They're not very thin. They don't feel like, I've seen some that look like this, but I mean, they chip real easy. They're very thin. They're almost like, I don't know, not like balsa wood, but you know what I'm saying? It's just real thin reed type material. But this sets it apart because it is the hardwood. You'll see on the bottom, they have these, reinforced. This one actually, I'm trying to look for
really quick. Rebel Junk is saying that the earliest baskets did not have the stamp, but they would have had the weavers. Do you know about when that would have, like, would that be early compared to by the time they started bringing in the consultants? Like, would those have all started having the stamp?
There were some questions that I was trying to answer. I was trying to jump the gun and answer those questions. And in my research, I did not find that particular thing as to when they started doing that. And I do know, case in point, we'll go back. We're going to probably go all over the place now, I'm sure, to the history. So Dave's father, J.W., started, making the baskets, and then Dave sold the baskets in the grocery store. Well, J.W. Longaberger baskets from before the Longaberger company, so the ones that he used to make before that, many of those don't have any markings on them at all. So, and some of those for collectors can be valuable. Those can be valuable because there's not that many out there. And they, at the time when the Longaberger company was in business, you could get them authenticated by the Longaberger company as to whether or not it was a legitimate J.W. Longaberger basket that he would have made. But yeah, so I'm not exactly sure how to answer that question as far as when the date happened, because, somewhere along, I mean, different things happen different times, and I don't know.
Okay, going back then to the, I want to go back to the stamp, because I think it was still Rebel Junk. I lost the comment. Was starting with, and you mentioned the weaver's initials or the weaver's names. So as you're looking at the bottom, so basically right out of the gate, if you don't have a stamp, I guess the earliest ones may not, but if it doesn't have a stamp, it's going to say Longaberger, but you then also have another name. So can you show that again? I gave you the full screen back.
Yeah. So this one is signed by the weaver up here. This was 1999. So they're all going to have that. Now, interesting, and this, so they're all going to have the weaver's name on here, but you may also find, as Patrick did, a basket that has more than one signature on it. And what that is they the family members would sometimes sign the basket, and usually they would sign it with their name and then the number of their birth order. Dave Longaberger was one of 12 children, and eventually most all, if not all, of his siblings participated in the company, and they would go and sign baskets. Now, the one that Patrick has here actually is from the Longaberger homestead. And the person purchased this when at the big company store after either going on a tour or just, I believe they just had them available there as well. But they often would have family members there available for signings. So this person had this tour basket signed with the, with the siblings' names. So you see, what is that? Gary 10, the Wendy 2. So that indicates their birth order, the number after him. And I can't remember what the other one was. He's got 3 there. I don't know what that name.
And then that top one would be, that's the Weaver, because it looks like that's the name with the year.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely correct.
And this even, I think even the little medallion says 2002. So I think that's what the Weaver signed. It's a little messy, but I think that says 2002.
Now, if you find one that's signed Dave Longaberger, that's a good one to have. Definitely, I think you found something important. If you find one that's signed Rachel or Tammy Longaberger, those are also good. Excuse me, Rachel and Tammy are the daughters of Dave Longaberger, and Tammy was the president of the company. I don't remember exactly which year she was made president, but Dave Longaberger was diagnosed with cancer in 1997. I believe. And at that time, he made Tammy CEO of the company, and he stepped back. So yeah, that sounds about right with my time frame there. And then his other daughter, Rachel, she was the CEO, president and or CEO of the Longaberger Foundation. And I looked up information on that because I knew it existed. I knew what, kind of, it was this nebulous concept, the Longaberger Foundation. I don't really know much about the Longaberger Foundation. Wikipedia said that it didn't have any employees, but there was still money coming in and going out. So I don't know, I don't know a whole lot about that. Different types of basket bottoms you'll find. I think I showed you, where did that one go? Oh, okay. So some of them, like you're going to see the woven bottom. You'll see the open weave maybe on some of them, like Patrick had. This one has a solid wood bottom on it. It all depends on the form of the basket. This one is an inverted basket, which actually the weavers said were some of the more difficult ones to weave. They didn't like these small ones with the inverted bottoms. They were more difficult to weave. But that goes back to the weaving process. So these baskets were all woven on forms. So they had basket forms that they would put down, and then they would they would start weaving around this basket form. So they were all uniform. And I guess at some point, and I wrote it down, but heavens, if I could find it, I don't think I have a date, but towards the end of their run, if you will, sometime in the 2000s, they changed their way of operating, and I'm not exactly 100% clear on what that entailed. But the basket forms, the original basket forms, were no longer necessary to the new process, or they needed different basket forms. So they started selling off the basket forms to consultants. So, and I didn't look up on eBay to see if I found a basket form on there to see what they were doing, but basically only consultants could buy those basket forms. So that might be something to keep an eye out for. To do a little, look, see, and see what those look like. And then, if you ever come across one, might be something worthwhile to have.
And I want to be sensitive to time. We've got about 20 minutes till the top of the hour. Time flies when we're doing these. So I want to make sure one of the things we cover is the values.
Right.
We've covered a couple of different things. Katie from Vintage and Vinyl is asking specifically about the red and green baskets being more valuable. But I think if we can back up the view a little bit and just talk about at what point what would be the kind of the unicorn? Would you be looking for the oldest basket, the rarest form, the rarest color, the signature? What makes the difference in some of the values?
Well, in my opinion, the production of Longaberger baskets is like a bell curve. So when they first started out, there were very few baskets made in comparison to 2000 when they were an $8 billion company. Then they tapered off and they had very few baskets at the end. So in my opinion, the ones that were at the beginning of the company, 73, 78, early 80s, and then the ones right towards the end when people were no longer buying are probably going to be the ones that are, because they're more scarce. I mean, that makes sense, right? When I went out to do comps on things, I discovered, and this is something important to keep in mind, as I said, the values have come way down from when they were originally put out. I wanted to touch on this too. So this kind of goes hand in hand with the values. In 1998, I believe, the Longaberger Company moved their corporate stuff from the downtown Dresden area of Ohio, and they built this huge complex in Phraseburg, Ohio. And one of the things that they did when they did that was they dismantled the largest barn maybe in all of Ohio, and they moved it to what they were calling the Longaberger Homestead. And they had this huge barn raising event where people were, getting buses and coming in and everything. And they had, let me find, it's here somewhere. Here it is. So each person that came to the barn raising event was able to purchase, they were able to purchase 2 of their commemorative barn raising baskets. And they got vouchers for those baskets. I was a consultant at that time, and I went to this barn raising thing, and I told you I was making money hand over fist on eBay, and this was, oh my gosh, this was probably the best. They gave out 2 vouchers for everybody. The baskets were $59.95 for the combo, and they were only available as a combo, which was this whole thing here with this cute little liner and everything and the plastic protector. And people on the bus found out that I was going to resell them. And so they gave me their extra vouchers. So I bought all kinds of baskets and was selling. This is not even my personal basket. This is one that I had to sell. Well, because we knew in advance we were going to get to purchase these baskets and we got the vouchers, I only knew I was getting one, but I sold that one that I was going to purchase for $59.95. I think I did a auction on eBay, and I sold it for $275 before it was even in my hands. That was fun. But the Longaberger barn raising did this. So there were a lot of these types of commemorative things. And I wanted to add too, and I'll get back to the value. I won't forget, I swear. They partnered with a whole bunch of different companies, very big companies. And one of the people that they partnered with during the Longaberger barn raising event was the Heisey Company. So Heisey made 3 different horses, glass horses, for the Longaberger barn raising: a red one, a blue one, and a green one, or cobalt, whatever they're calling them. The red one is the more popular and the harder one to find. So those of you that, if you ever find one of these horses out in the wild, you definitely want to take a look and make sure you snag those, because they do have some value. I think, and I didn't write it down, but I think I saw that they were in the $100 range for those. So it depends on what you can find them for, as with everything, what you want to do. But I did write down some values of things, and I also wanted to show you some interesting values that I wrote down from the stuff that I purchased. For example, this little booking basket here, and this was available to somebody if they went to a home show and then they booked another home show. They could purchase this little booking basket, or maybe this was a gift. This little booking basket was a gift for the hostess that did that. The value of this would have been $40. Okay, 1999 to 2002 is when this was. But I saw one of these sell on eBay for $2.99. Okay, so you have to be careful about the value. Another one that I did the value on was that, did I do it here? Maybe I moved it. I'm sure I did it. I moved my note. Okay, let's find another one that I didn't move the note on. Yes. Oh, here, this one. So this, I do have the note for that. So that Mother's Day basket that I showed you, in 1997, you could purchase that as a customer for the full set, the combo with the lid and everything that I showed you. The tie-on would have been extra, but with the lid and the liner and the protector, it would have been $92.90. The tie-on was an additional $7. Comps for that now, just as it is, $60 to $70. So it's a far cry. So when I would say, in my videos, and sometimes I would say to people, the Longaberger basket is not, doesn't have as much value. Well, that is if you're like me and I was collecting from the beginning when I spent $100 on this basket. But if you guys are out and you find a basket like this for $20 or $30 and can flip it for 60 or 70, that's a pretty good score. So, excuse me, it all depends on, what you're finding. The highest end baskets that I was finding on eBay were the furniture pieces. They also did that wrought iron stuff that I was talking about. They did wrought iron furniture. Now, I didn't look into what the original cost on this was, but the highest thing that I saw was a shelf unit of 3 wrought iron shelves along with the wood inserts was selling for $450. Again, if you know and are familiar with the the selling price today, it'll help you in determining whether or not you want to pick it up to, either for your collection or to flip it. These things, I wanted to show you guys these things. So they're collectors club, actually. They had a collectors club that people joined. You paid a fee and you could join. And these miniatures were a big deal back then, where you could purchase these little miniature baskets. These baskets actually originally sold, this mini apple basket, like you see here, sold for $140. I saw them selling as low as $10. Okay, $10 to $40. So that's another thing if you collected at the beginning, the value is, gone. But if you're coming into it now and you know what to look for, and you can find a basket like this, like Patrick did, he found his baskets, I think they were $5 each.
Yes.
Then you have something that you can make a little bit of money on. Now, if I were to list this on eBay, I would definitely not list it at a low price and do an auction on it. I would set a higher price and maybe do a best offer or something and go from there. I did find some other things when I was going through there. I found that they had canister sets that I believe were after my time, basket canister sets. Those were selling well, like in the $300 to $400 range. So it's not something that if you had them to begin with, you were going to make a lot of money because the values have come down. But if you see them out at a yard sale or a thrift store or something, and you know that set of basket canisters is worth $300 to $400, and you find them for $50, you might want to pick them up. So again, the value, how many baskets can you go to, Goodwill or whatever, or a yard sale and pick up a basket like this and make $40 off of it? Baskets don't have that kind of value. Some of them do. That's a whole different deep dive for another day. But most baskets don't have that kind of value. They're very inexpensive. So, if you do see a Longaberger basket and you see it for a good price, it's not a bad thing to pick up. But I think that the challenge becomes knowing what that good price is, because a lot of people out there are still trying to sell them at close to what they paid for them when they bought them, and that value is just not there anymore.
One of the questions, and I was scanning, but it was really early on and I can't find it. Vintage Vinny had put a chat up, and he was saying that he finds a lot of, and he also finds the ceramics, but that he's finding a lot in Pennsylvania. And I'm just curious, there are a couple of the people in the chat, I don't know where they're from. Was this a regional thing? Like, are we going to find more things in the Midwest or around Ohio? Did it stay local, or because where were the consultants based, or did this go to California? Nate in New Zealand saying that he's never even heard of these, so they didn't necessarily get exported. But how nationwide did this become? Or like Harry Humstone is saying that he can typically find them inexpensively in garage sales in his area. Is it more of a regional thing, or did it get nationwide?
Well, it was nationwide. There were consultants all over the place, and I don't remember exactly how many states they boasted. It may have been all 50 states at one time. I know that they were not international, so Nate's right. He wouldn't have seen it, I don't think. I did see a notation that at one point when they were floundering towards the end, excuse me, of the company, they started to offer them for sale in Canada. So there was a limited amount that was available, limited number of consultants in Canada as well, but they were nationwide. But a big chunk of that is going to be here in the Midwest, Ohio and the surrounding states, because they were based in Ohio. So that's why we can find them. I find them all the time, very inexpensively at yard sales and things. Yeah.
And you were talking before we started, this was the little tie thing that I got with one of them. And it says Longaberger on it, says finishing touches. But when I spun it around, and I think you mentioned this before, this homestead, you said that was their headquarters store.
Yeah, that was when they moved out in Dresden, Ohio was still is, I'm sure, the cutest little town. But when Longaberger was the main attraction in Dresden, people came from all over, bus tours and whatever, into Dresden. And Longaberger had a whole variety of different storefronts in downtown Dresden. They had the Popeyes restaurant, because Dave Longaberger, actually, that was his nickname, was Popeye, and different company stores. Well, somewhere along the line, because that barn raising was 1998, I think. So around that time, they started pulling out of Dresden, because Dresden had a love-hate relationship with the Longaberger Company. They loved what it did for their economy. They loved all the jobs, but they did not like the people that descended on the town and made it hard for them to drive, hard to get around. It was a little crazy for them. So Longaberger moved everything over to this big, and I'm talking big, complex in Frazeysburg, Ohio, with the Crawford barn that they did the barn raising for, and then this huge homestead set of shops and everything, and you could tour the factory and see the baskets made. They also have, and I saw a drone flyover, it's still there, and it's like, if you like those abandoned building kind of things that they do, they had the world's largest basket there at the homestead. They built this apple basket there, and that's still standing there. I believe they also had some baskets in downtown Dresden as well, so on the smaller scale to that. But that was their main store. It reminded me, when I went there, of Disney. You know how they had the Main Street has the stores that look like individual, buildings or whatever, but it's really all kind of one thing. That's kind of what the homestead reminded me of. It was huge, and they had all kinds of giftware and stuff. Matter of fact, I believe I probably bought this at the homestead, because it's just a little gifty item, out of a snowman that, has their name on it and whatever.
So there was just the one homestead store then in Ohio. So if you got something from the homestead, or you wanted it had to be from their location. Now, you mentioned the world's largest basket. Now, is that the building? Because there's been a couple of comments in the chat, and I definitely want to make sure we talk about the building, because I'm fascinated by the building.
No, the world's largest basket that I was talking about was an apple basket. It was a woven basket like you saw here, but it was big. No, the basket building. So Dave Longaberger envisioned, he dreamed really big. That's part of the reason why, if you ever get a chance and you're interested in that sort of thing, to read this book. It's fascinating about his life story. But this basket, this is the company headquarters that they built in Newark, Ohio, and it is modeled after the market basket, which was their signature basket with two handles on it. And I have some information that I wrote down about the basket building so I don't forget. Yeah, the basket building. Okay. So the basket building was offices. That was their corporate offices that they had there. They didn't have a store or anything. Although you could, if you were part of a bus tour, you could tour it. But they opened in 1997. The basket handles weigh 150 tons, and they're heated in the winter to keep the ice from forming and damaging them. Although, of course, it has sat vacant for a number of years, so I'm not sure what they're doing with that. But I had heard when I was a consultant that they had to add nets to the basket handles because they were having problems with people that own their own small aircraft flying through the handles. So they had to make it so that they wouldn't try to fly through the handles, whether it was nuts or something, but they had issues with that. But the company stopped paying property tax on that building in 2014, and they moved out entirely in 2016. So in 2017, it was purchased by a Cleveland developer and was put up for sale in 2019. And last time I talked about this briefly, somebody said, "Oh yeah, it was going to become a luxury hotel," and it's like, "Oh, that sounds really cool." Well, yeah, but then we had the pandemic. So they were going to do a luxury hotel in the basket building, but then the pandemic hit, and you know what? People are not traveling like they used to, and it was going to require major renovations in order to turn it from an office complex into hotels. So they just totally scrapped that idea, and it's back on the market again. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the price that it's being sold for is like right around 6.5 million or something. And the building itself, when they built it, was much higher price than that, which is kind of sad.
Looking at the picture of the front, is that, how many stories tall was that?
It was a 7-story building, 180,000 square feet was in that building. And so, yeah, kind of cool because in the weave, you see the windows. So the windows are here in the weave. I mean, it's just fascinating. And I guess Dave Longaberger envisioned like many more company buildings in various shapes of the baskets, that they had. And then, of course, that never happened because Dave Longaberger did die. He died in 2019 from, not 2019, oh my gosh. He died in 1999. I don't know where that number came from. On March 17th, and he had some form of cancer. I don't remember what it was. Which was kind of sad. And he tried to set it up because he was really the visionary of the company. I mean, he could dream big and he could make things happen. Like that basket building, he had to go through several different architects and whatever to find one who was willing to take on the project because they all thought he was nuts, that it couldn't be done. He heard that from a number of people. It can't be done. But he did finally find somebody, and obviously it could be done because they did it. But he was really the visionary, and I think that's what happened after he left. That combined with the Great Recession, and all those different things that, the changing world. And I just don't think that his children had quite the same vision and flexibility that he did, unfortunately. And that's kind of what happened. But they were bought. I want to make sure I get that out there. So the company ceased operations. So I think somewhere along the line, I told you that in 2012, when they were down to 100 million, they were taken over by CVSL Incorporated. And I'm not sure what that entailed because it was always a private company. I don't know how, they must have sold it, even though it said taken over by. But in 2018, they ceased operations altogether. They closed. So essentially, there was no Longaberger company. But in November of 2019, the intellectual property of the company, so the basket logo, all that stuff that goes along with it, the forms, the copyrights, the patents, and whatever they owned, that was purchased by a company called Excel Brands. And even though Tammy herself she had resigned from the company, and I don't know where that note is to tell you what the year was, but she did resign from the company at one point as the CEO. But when Excel bought it, she and her sister Rachel were part of the relaunch of the company. So you can buy Longaberger baskets now. Excel sells through what they call stylists, which are kind of similar to consultants, who pay $49 a year in order to sell, and they get 20% commission on whatever they sell. There are no face-to-face sales, though. It's all done online. And part of that is, think about it. This happened in 2019, in the fall of 2019. So basically, they were launching this new company during the pandemic, right? So, they had to, work around that. So everything was online, but a stylist could help you and lead you, and you would know about them through the stylist. Some of their some of the down. I can't think of words. I'm bad with words. Anyway, the baskets doubled in price with this new Excel buyout. Doubled in price from what they would have originally been sold for. So there's a lot of people that have kind of complained about that the baskets are selling for twice what they were. But when Excel took them over, they started out with 120 products, and at this point, they have about 700 products, and they intend to grow to about 2,000 products, including food and wine. So you can buy some Longaberger, food and Longaberger wine at some point in time. And it does appear as if they're growing. Things are selling out for that company, so I think it's looking good for them. So.
And you said they bought the intellectual property, including the logos and everything. Assuming that they're stamping the bottom, they wouldn't still say Dresden, Ohio, would they?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if they changed that when they moved to the homestead, because Frazeysburg was actually a little outside of Dresden, and I don't know where they're manufacturing the baskets at now.
But you'd be able to tell that they're modern reproductions as opposed to.
And I haven't seen one, and
Okay.
I didn't see any. I didn't see anything online that indicated what they would look like.
What they look like. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're at the top of the hour. There are a couple of comments that came through, and I think would be a good wrap up. So basically kind of the lesson learned is we do need to, eBay is our friend. So we have to figure out what is going to really be selling versus what's not. But I think, again, it was Vinny was talking about seeing the ceramics. Carolyn was talking about Longaberger rugs. Carolyn Whitney had mentioned that. A couple other people. Is there any value? I guess you mentioned the wrought iron. Is the reselling values just in the baskets, or are some of like that little snowman pillow you showed? Is the Longaberger name still retaining any value for resale?
I would doubt that this kind of stuff has much value at all. This kind of stuff. But the baskets and stuff, yeah, they do. Like I said, you could find some of those baskets. I was telling you that the value,
or the rugs and the mugs, like this, like the non-baskets.
The pottery stuff, the pottery stuff is still going to have some value.
Okay.
Because people need to replace stuff, and what they already own. So certainly that's going to have some value for replacement.
Good point.
This was part of their original, this was standard. You could buy it in blue, green, or red. I just was at an estate sale not long ago where they had the whole set of the Christmas line, because they had some with holly on it. And I can't remember what they wanted. And at the time, I thought it was really high. I thought, wow, that's really high. And I don't know that I wrote it down here to tell you what that went for, but I was surprised. Here we go. I did write it down. So a set of the Christmas plates, so the holly. So instead of this blue with this swoosh lines or whatever, you would have holly on them instead. And a set for like a place setting of 4, so 4 cups, 4 plates, 4 whatever the 4-piece setting was, went for $400.
Wow.
Of the Christmas stuff. So it is something, again, you got to kind of know, you got to kind of look around and see what it is, and don't, if you're like me from the heyday of Longaberger and you're out and you see this basket and that this was a $150 basket initially, and you see somebody wants, $75 for it, and you go, oh, that's a great price. No, it's not, because they're only selling for like $40 and $50, so it's like getting into a whole new mindset if you're wanting to do it as a reseller. Now, I have them all over my house. I love them. Like any collectible, you have to buy those things for you. You have to buy those things because you enjoy them, because you like them, which I did. I use them. They're utilitarian for me. I have a basket in my kitchen right now where I have my pot holders and things, and it's a basket that I pull out anytime I'm having a party and I'm going to serve punch. I serve it in a basket, and I think that's really cool. A lot of these are really fun to serve at parties, to put your chips in, and, they have all, these different uses for them. Those little sweetheart baskets I had on my dresser with, little, jewelry and things, tucked inside. So they're utilitarian and I love them. So for me, the fact that my value has dropped tremendously from what I originally paid for them, that's life. Lots of stuff you buy is not worth. You buy a car, you drive it off the lot, it's not worth I mean, it immediately depreciates. So, but as a reseller, I think there's still some money to be had if you look at it with the right eye, and that they're not going to command you don't want to get that same estate sale with the holly dishes. They had prices on the bigger baskets. They priced them by size, large, medium, and small. In the large baskets, they wanted $100 for. I thought, you're never going to get $100 for that basket. Some of them, and some of them actually, like I said, that bell curve, some of them on either side in good condition may be, that's not such a bad thing. But you really, and I was just scratching the surface when I was going through all of this and researching and stuff for today. You kind of, I mean, if that's something that you're interested in, I mean, there's money to be had, but it takes some effort to know what you're looking at. But definitely. Go ahead.
I think what Susan is saying is what's perfect and a great way to end on it. You were great to have on for a deep dive because you have a personal history with them and you enjoy them.
Yeah.
For us as resellers, we may not want to decorate our homes with them, but definitely, I just want to thank you because we're past the top of the hour, so I want to go ahead and wrap things up. Mm-hmm. You've covered so much; it's given us a lot to think about, and I will look at them a little bit differently because, admittedly, I never would have looked twice. I just didn't realize that they still had any sort of value. I just thought it was one of those many tales of collectibles that went through the roof, and then now, but like you said, they don't have the value they once did. Mm-hmm. But maybe that's where the younger market comes through. And I lost the comment, but somebody was commenting. They've called it the stair basket, which initially I couldn't think of what they were talking about, and then all of a sudden it hit me. I'm like, oh wait, I remember those, and that was a really neat design. That if you can find somebody who's looking to build a new collection, find them inexpensively. I did. This one definitely is worth more than $5. Basically, this one online is probably worth about $5, maybe 10. So it's like you're not going to get a lot of the money, but thank you so much for covering so much. I've tried to highlight most of the questions that came in. I apologize to those if I missed anything. But I appreciate everyone joining in. Again, a great thanks to Cyndi. Make sure you're subscribed to her channel, Mimi's Treasure Cottage. She does live sales on, when do you do your live sales?
Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, so join Cyndi on Mimi's Treasure Cottage on Wednesday nights. She puts out some great content beyond that. It's possible if we can get our schedules. I think we might actually be doing a joint shop with me video coming up. So I'll actually be seeing Cyndi in person. So keep your eyes out for that. And there was a question that came in from, now I can't remember who asked it. I think it was Vintage and Vino about my deep dives. I haven't been scheduling them as regularly because I did so many of them last year that it just became a question of trying to find people to schedule. But I do have another one. And again, because of scheduling, I had this one today and I have another one next Sunday. So the next deep dive will be next week. And he was probably here to make sure he figured out how things were going. But Harry Humstone is going to be my next deep dive on insulators. And
fun.
What I did over the weekend was I went out and I bought my very first insulator. So Harry can tell me whether I did a good job. Bought a lap 1928 pottery insulator, and I also had a glass one that's not within reach, so I didn't show it. But so that'll be my next deep dive. That'll be literally 1 week from now, so May 9th, also at 8 p.m. Eastern. I will be doing a deep dive with Harry Humstone on insulators, because that is definitely another category. I see them all the time, and I have no idea what I with my daughter. And she's like, I was having a hard time describing what they even were. So it's one of those. Found the pottery one, found the glass ones. I know there's different materials. So join us next week with Harry, and he will be covering and entertaining and educating us all on insulators. And again, thank everyone for joining the chat. Everyone reach out and give thanks to Cyndi for joining us in the deep dive. And thank you for your time. And thanks you all for putting your trust in Trusty Huckster. Everybody have a great night. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me, Patrick.
You bet.